how it started,
You must have strong hands.
how it ended, To say this episode gets dark would be an understatement. The show is definitely not holding back. We're seeing just how evil the Empire can be, and that would be a powerful statement if it wasn't juxtaposed with this. Who had drunk white girl dancing on their Star Wars bingo card? I want to know who you are so we can revoke your Star Wars license. You are done. This is your fault for writing that on your bingo card. That's why it's here. You are done. No more Star Wars for you. I mean, seriously, who thought this was a good idea? Why would you put a wedding in the middle of the drama of this show, and why this episode? Of all the episodes, you picked this episode for this stupid ass wedding. And just in case anyone's wondering, yes, we have to suffer through the entire wedding ceremony. All of it. The stupid circle walk when the parents give their kids away, the exchanging of vows, and then not one, but two cringy ass wedding dances. Mon Mothma is over here dancing like a white girl at a bachelorette party in a gay bar. White people have spent decades trying to prove they've got rhythm, and she just annihilates that in minutes. And the kicker? This has nothing to do with the plot for the show. It doesn't move the plot at all. There are only a couple of things that happen at this wedding related to the overall story. Kolma tells Mon Mothma that he's been speaking with Double Skolden frequently, and implies that he might tell Skolden about Mon Mothma's involvement with the rebellion if she doesn't make things more beneficial for her. Mon Mothma then tells Luthen about this, and since they don't know how much Kolma wants to keep quiet, Luthen decides to permanently remove the man from the equation. That's it. That's all the connection to the main story. As you can see, that's not a lot of stuff. It actually took me longer to explain it than it did for them to do it. But in order to see these very short scenes, we had to sit through this damn wedding and watch Mon Mothma prove that she's part of a rhythmless nation. So, why does she even get drunk? Well, see, before the wedding, she tries to comfort her daughter and talks about how her mother was drunk at her wedding, and that if her daughter doesn't want to go through with this wedding, she doesn't have to. And the girl throws it back in Mon Mothma's face. So take that, and then add in Luthen killing Kolma, and now Mon Mothma can't help but have a drink or five, and then go and trip over herself on the dance floor. This has nothing to do with the main story. It doesn't move the plot, it actually drags down the episode, and it's even worse because the dancing gets intercut with the most dramatic scene in the episode. 1 minute we're watching the Empire be the ultimate evil, and the next we're watching this silly ass dance. Them dancing in circles is a perfect metaphor for this plotline. Fortunately, the rest of the episode is way better than this. We get the payoff for the dinner that was set up in the last episode. Cyril's mother shows up for a visit, and it's the most glorious, uncomfortable scene I have ever seen. Cyril's mother is a perfect combo of a Jewish mom and an Italian mom. She puts on this little performance, acting demure but trying to exude power and control, and she thoroughly embarrasses Cyril. She's also tried to unnerve Daedra. When she asks about Daedra's family, Daedra says she was raised by the Empire, and Cyril's mother rubs it in that Daedra didn't have a mother's love. It's also implied that maybe Daedra's parents opposed the Empire, so they were arrested and possibly killed, and the Empire took her and brainwashed her. Well, that's dark, and it explains a lot about her personality. It's also why Cyril's mom's attempt to unnerve her don't work, but they totally crush Cyril. He's so put off, he goes into another room, and when they cut to him, he's just in a puddle on the bed. I don't know why I find this funny, but it's perfect. I wish they'd shown him melting on the spot. It'd have been awesome. But the best part is when Daedra checks his mother. She just reads this woman from top to bottom, flexes her imperial authority, and then kind of pulls Cyril's mom into her plans. Basically, she says that she'll make sure that Cyril keeps up the pretenses and stays out of the way, and in exchange, Cyril's mother will stop messing with him and maybe feed Daedra info she wants to know. Cyril hears them chatting it up and goes to check and has no idea that he's just a pawn in both of their plans. Brilliant. I love this. I love every minute of this. But things take a much more serious tone back on Mina Rao. Cassian escapes, but he still can't fly the ship. He hotwires the comm to send a signal to Clea back on Coruscant, and I gotta say, it's a nice use of practical analog devices and tech. It really does look like he's hotwiring the thing. He tells Clea about how the ship isn't what he expected, and then she tells him about the trouble on Mina Rao, so he heads there to help his friends. Meanwhile, on the planet, Kellen tries to get Cassian's friends to a different location using fake papers. The idea is to try to avoid the Imperials altogether by moving from location to location, but there's a good chance this won't work, and if the Imperials check, the papers won't hold up. This episode is far more on the nose with its political commentary about illegal immigration than previous episodes, and I can imagine some on the right will get pissy about that, but in fairness, this is literally what's happening right now by the people they put in charge, so it's a little late to complain. No, the Empire doesn't come out looking like the good guys in the situation, but they are the villains, so that comes with the territory. And it gets much worse. Cassian's friends try to leave, but the Imperials decide to show up early. Unfortunately, Will went to say goodbye to his girlfriend, so he's right outside the grocery store when the Imperials arrive. He runs back home. Meanwhile, Brasso hops on a speeder to go look for him, but gets caught by the Imperials and brought in front of Kellen. He accuses Kellen of betraying them, and at first I thought this was true, but when I watched it a second time, Brasso only says it as a cover to protect Kellen. It's almost a throwaway moment. I wish they put a little more effort into showing what's going on, just so it's clear what trouble Kellen would be in for helping these guys. That would at least give context to why Brasso is willing to put his own life on the line. Then we get to the darkest scene in the show. Imperial Officer Kroll attempts to, let's say, grape Bix. I'm dancing around the term because YouTube is so sensitive about using the actual word. Apparently it upsets the advertisers, which is interesting because they don't have a problem advertising with shows like Law & Order Special Victims Unit. At any rate, the show doesn't hold back. There's no room for a mistake. It's not implied, it's not avoided, it's obvious from the start of the scene what Kroll intends to do. He reveals that he knows Bix doesn't have papers and tries to coerce her into having sex. When she refuses, he tries to force her. She fights back and eventually manages to kill him. And this isn't a quick fight. This goes on for a while. Like I said, the show doesn't hold back. We see Bix fight for her life. Yeah, it's an uncomfortable, unnerving scene. And it's supposed to be. This is the truth of how authoritarians use their power. It isn't pretty. I understand why some people would want to avoid seeing it. It takes them out of the realm of fantasy and puts them right smack in the middle of reality. Could the show have done this without letting the audience see every moment? Yes. Would it have been as powerful? No. People like to avoid these issues, and by obscuring the scene by filming it from the outside, so we only hear the fight and only see Kroll when he walks out and dies, lets the audience avoid dealing with the reality of what just happened. Sometimes creators can get away with not showing the act because people's imagination will create something much worse, but in this case, because people will try to avoid that, and because of the message of the show, of its depicting authoritarianism in its full form, I think it serves the story better to show what happens. Again, you're meant to be uncomfortable. That's the point. And in fairness, as violent as the scene is, it doesn't actually go that far. Compare this scene to the scene from Watchmen, for example, or anything from the show Oz, and it pales in comparison. I think what makes it so shocking is that we've never seen anything like this in Star Wars. As long as the show doesn't make a habit of doing this, I think the scene is justified. Again, it shows what happens when people put authoritarians in power. And like I said in the previous review, it's shockingly topical and current despite the script being written long before the last election. Moving on, Cassian arrives just in time to catch stormtroopers chasing after Brasso, and in another rare moment, this time of competence, the stormtrooper has accurate aim. He kills Brasso. I know the running gag in Star Wars is that stormtroopers can't shoot for shit. The Mandalorian played on this with a trooper missing his target that was literally 2 feet away. However, that just makes the stormtroopers look silly. By allowing them to aim accurately and kill their target, it makes them an actual threat. Obviously, they can't always have perfect aim, otherwise we'd have no show. but they need to be somewhat accurate for the audience to believe that the characters would fear the stormtroopers. This is a great example of doing that. At any rate, Cassian kills the troopers, finds Brasso's body, and eventually escapes the planet with Will and Bix. Overall, I thought this was a good episode, but the tone shift between the silliness of the wedding and the seriousness on Mina Rao can't be excused. It's like someone cut two different shows together. I guess I could consider the Daedra and Cyril scenes as a bridge between the two, but honestly, it doesn't really work. The wedding should have never been in this episode and didn't need to take up as much time as it did. It dragged down the show and doesn't work at all juxtaposed next to a violent assault. You can't have Biggs fighting for her life in one scene and then Mon Mothma doing the Harlem Shake in the next. Now, I haven't watched the other episodes yet, so I'm hoping the tone stays serious because that works well with the concept of the show. If not, the show's saving grace is, at least it's nowhere near as bad as The Acolyte. But what do I know? I'm just some guy.